Welcome to Between the Brackets. I'm Noam Cohen, and my guest for this episode is Noam Cohen, who is a freelance journalist and writer who has written about Wikipedia since its early years for the New York Times, Wired, and other publications. He's also the author of the book The Know-It-Alls, The Rise of Silicon Valley as a Political Powerhouse and Social Wrecking Ball, a 2017 book that was reissued this month in a new paperback edition, featuring a new introduction by Noam that covers Silicon Valley in the ensuing years. And last but not least, he's a Wikipedia editor himself. So Noam, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Great to be here.
First of all, where are you located?
I'm in Brooklyn, in fashionable Brooklyn, by myself in the apartment. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I used to live there too. So
I'm Manhattan born and raised, but like now I rarely go to Manhattan. I'm just in Brooklyn. Yeah.
Oh, okay. A real Brooklynite. Well, there's a lot to cover, of course, in the book and in general. One really interesting thing is that the sort of consensus view of Silicon Valley and politics is very roughly Silicon Valley started out, and tech companies in the US in general started out sort of apolitical / libertarian, and then gradually started getting more political and more left-leaning, favoring the Democrats starting maybe the 1990s, culminating in the 2016 election where they were all solidly against the election of Donald Trump, except for a few holdouts, the founders of PayPal, especially Elon Musk and Peter Thiel. And then somehow in 2024, there was a so-called vibe shift where just about everyone switched over to the other side and now supported Trump, both politically and in terms of his policies regarding cryptocurrency and everything else. The interesting thing about that is that your book, which critiques Silicon Valley, came out in 2017. It's now reissued, but you were taking sort of the opposite view about Silicon Valley, right from when supposedly it was at its most left-leaning.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's kind of you don't want to say I told you so, but I think more what I would say is that it was always clear in the record. Like, it was always clear. What I basically did in the book was just to look at what people said. Like, there's an incredible website that has every interview Mark Zuckerberg's ever given since he was like 16. He's been famous since he was like in high school and had a company that was almost going to be bought for $1 million by Microsoft. So everything he's ever said is there. His worldview is very clear, as is the worldview of Mark Andreessen. And I guess the thing, so I was, and fill in all the blanks, so to me, it was always evident that they would have an alignment with Trump, that they fundamentally don't believe in regulation. They believe in their own extraordinary talents and have contempt for the public. So kind of contempt for democracy. I mean, I'm not going to say they didn't endorse Democrats or give money to Democrats when it was useful, but the basic message was always, we need a government that will leave us alone, that will let us do what we want, and what we're doing is so important it shouldn't be interfered with. And that was, for a while, that was sort of the centrist Democrats, but it was always, that was the overarching point. And to me, actually, the thing that made it most clear, I remember having like an epiphany of sorts, was reading Reid Hoffman's book. Reid Hoffman, another one of the PayPal, mafia, but he's the liberal one. He's the one who's aligned with the Democrats. And his book was so harsh. It was called The Startup of You. And it was about how we're all in a gig economy. Like, and it hit a footnote. It was a footnote that said, don't expect Social Security or anything else to bail you out in this world. That's like expecting like your like drug addicted cousin to come through for you. It's like, it's not going to be there, and you better figure out how to survive in this world on your own. I thought, this is the Democrat? This is his vision of government? I mean, it's absurd. I mean, like, this is a very extreme view, very pro-technology. I feel like now they've kind of, the mask is off. So now, Andreessen endorsed, sort of was flattering toward Obama in the early days. Now it's just clear he's an extreme, you might call it, he's very sympathetic to the Italian fascists. He's a very extreme view of the world, and he always had that view. And again, they're like all these little episodes I could point to that were like sort of reveal what they think. Like, there was a comment that Andreessen gave about India, right? There was a controversy about whether India would have this service from Facebook that was called Free Basics, where it would be a free access to the internet, but it came with, the idea you had to have like Facebook products on it, and India was not down for that. And he wrote a tweet that just said, has India ever done anything right since they got rid of colonialism? And it's just like, that's an extreme view. That's a view. It's a very far right-wing view. And so how would I go around pretending that Andreessen's sort of a moderate figure who maybe he's open to Democrats or not? He has a very extreme view that technology and technologists should lead the world. So to me, it was always evident because I really just looked at what they said and what they believed and didn't really buy the PR spin.
To what extent, this is really getting outside the domain of this podcast, but to what extent is that a difference with left-wing politics versus a difference with the Democrats? I mean, the I guess centrist Democrats that Silicon Valley supported Hillary Clinton and everyone else potentially have that. You might say, I don't know, have that same sort of pro-capitalist mentality. I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, I think it was interesting. There was going to be a report. Like, I remember talking to a journalist who was working on this report, which I think fell through as the politics changed, about the so-called Atari Democrats, who I'd barely thought of. These were like people like Al Gore in the 1980s who were really early on to the idea of the information superhighway and very pro-internet. I mean, I think there was a group of Democrats who were optimistic about things. I myself was optimistic. I remember writing something in 2000 for Dissent that was like, this is going to change the world for good. I mean, it's natural to be excited about a new technology. I think the Democrats, aligned with it. Of course, it aligned with the idea of getting money from them. So it was like a self-preservation too for the Clintons and Gores of the world to find this new, growing, wealthier, technology industry that can support you. So I think there was a natural pairing there. But just to be clear, this is like, the moderate Democrats, which I don't think are going to really have a home anymore. Like, I don't think that really Democrats can have an alignment with Silicon Valley anymore. But there was that alignment made sense in that they were fine also they were optimistic about technology. It was self-serving to get their support. And I think it was they were doing their best to make it a natural match and kind of avoid the reckoning. Because obviously the reckoning comes when they become so big that you need to regulate them. And they're like, whoa, that's not the deal. There was this, Andreessen, come back to him again, this really important, innovator, creator that, helped create the Mosaic and then Netscape browser. So it's a hugely influential guy who then became now is a hugely influential venture capitalist. And he gave this interview in the New York Times to Ross Douthat that was saying there was a deal. It was an understood deal that they would be left alone. So I think there always was going to be a day of reckoning that, like, they were happy to let, Silicon Valley grow and they get their donations, everything's fine. But like, what do you do when they run the world? Like, are you cool with it? Are you cool with them like being the center, of X, just making up stuff and fomenting, anger and violence? Or do you say, like, we need to regulate it? So I think there was always, they were putting off. So it was like kind of delusional, I would say, what the Democrats were doing at the time, centrist ones. I don't think we can go back to that world. I think it's going to have to be two parties. One's going to be aligned with Silicon Valley and one will be not aligned. And we'll see who wins in the elections. And, that's what we're facing, I think.
That's interesting. Sure. And I guess it ties into the still growing power and wealth of the tech sector and Silicon Valley. You had a very interesting graphic table in your introduction showing just the sheer expansion of wealth of the top 10 richest tech moguls in the last, I think, just 10 years.
Yeah, staggering. Yeah, it was since the book came out. I wanted to sort of show that, like, I was already writing them as being this like powerhouse, right, in the subtitle, and causing all this wreckage, and then not reckoning the fact that not only did someone like Musk become so much wealthier, but they all did. Peter Thiel, Reid Hoffman was the one exception. He didn't really increase so much, but everyone else, Mark Zuckerberg, it's kind of funny to talk about, like, what does it mean when you go from like 50 billion to 250 billion? It's like these numbers don't even make any sense, but it's like there is a certain, like, just FU money that comes at when you get that high. And it's like, that's kind of what happened. They went from being incredibly powerful to like being, the size of governments. Someone like Musk is, it's really going to be, there's gonna have to be a reckoning. It's really, it's exciting, but scary because I don't think we can continue on this course, And it's funny, like Wikipedia, to bring it back to that, like Wikipedia has always been the the counter, and it's almost like I see Wikipedia being vulnerable in a lot of ways, and like it's like this lone, different model, different incentive system, different way of prospering that is under threat all the time because they don't have the same kind of resources. They aren't like at the level of controlling governments or influencing governments, and it's like it's this other path. So it is always this great other path, this other way we could have gone. I just see Wikipedia as being so central to the early vision of the internet and like kind of the last relic. I throw Craigslist in there too, but I don't know, really just Wikipedia really. So that's why it's a float out of it. Like the Wikipedia was what I wrote about before I wrote about the decline of the internet. And it's almost like seeing how Wikipedia never was kind of modeled gave me the impetus, like the dog that didn't bark or something. I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, Jimmy Wales obviously didn't show up in that table of the
Yeah.
richest moguls. I do wonder. I mean, he's a co-founder of Fandom, which was then known as Wiki Cities and then Wikia, and that seems to be doing quite well. There in the, I think, still in the top 50 websites in the world. I wonder how his
Yeah,
network.
I mean, there was that famous article that talked about like him not being a billionaire. I guess I never really thought that he should be a billionaire. I thought the whole framing of that article was really unfair. I think he was, kind of offended by it, or not. I mean, it's like it's sort of unflattering to sort of focus on what you're not. Why should he expect to be a billionaire? I mean, again, it's like the question. Jonas Salk didn't become a billionaire either, and the guy invented something that cure polio. I mean, it's even bigger than Wikipedia, I think. And like why we don't go around like analyzing why he's not a billionaire. Like the whole framing was so perverse because again, there shouldn't be billionaires, and there certainly shouldn't be this correlation that you do something that helps society, you should be obscenely rich. It's just really, so I'm always like sympathetic to him in that sense. And, I guess the, Wiki, I guess, you can admire in the book. I talk about how, Jimmy at times was open to having ads and how I really think that would have ruined Wikipedia. And then you can kind of give him credit, I guess, that he went on his own path where there were ads. Like, I guess you could say, as long as people know what they're getting into. And I guess the only time I ever kind of, not to get in the Wikipedia tangent, but I remember when it was emerging, I always did feel there was a conflict there that like, Wiki, I guess, focuses on pop culture. And it's weird to say that like Wikipedia doesn't, because, it's famously like the length of articles about, the Simpsons is mind boggling. But so, I mean, it was always, I felt like it was kind of strange that he was like taking his authority and kind of finding a private way of doing it. But credit to him, like he left the sacred thing alone. And I always say about Jimmy, he could have messed it up in a million ways and he didn't. And that's like, I'm not saying he should be a billionaire for that, but kudos and like all gratitude for that,
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Well, I'm sure we'll get more into the political stuff and the Wikipedia stuff. But I want to ask before that, people seeing the title and the summary of the book might think it's basically one long polemic. No offense, but the majority of it is interestingly really just biographies of various Silicon Valley notables, past and present, some of whom you've mentioned, including some key figures in AI, in the founding of the creation of AI, and Stanford University, which really is integral to the whole Silicon Valley ecosystem. How did you decide to structure it that way to really focus on these individual
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, first of all, I would say that partly it was like a software, not to like make technology the driver, but there's this thing called Scrivener, which really helps you kind of write a book. It's like meant, I think, for academics maybe, and it's like it just helped me kind of divide things and kind of can write and then kind of organize. For me, because I would say like I used to write a column for the New York Times called Link by Link, which I had a lot of. It was in the business section, but I would say it would never really be about business. It was often about Wikipedia or free software or other weird kind of things, but it wasn't about the business of technology necessarily. And I could almost like write those and kind of organize them in my mind, and like, because it was 1,000 words, let's say, and you could kind of do it. A book becomes sort of sprawling, and I guess I organized it. It's amazing how, looking back, how AI was so central to it, and this figure of John McCarthy was so central to the telling of it, because I do think like the critique I'm trying to say about Silicon Valley today is that it does all date back to sort of computer science and the history of computer science and the history of Stanford and the way venture capital works. I mean, partly I had a cousin who's not alive anymore, who was a I used to like, he was an amazing character, and he's exactly the same age as Bill Gates. I remember him telling me like, Bill Gates is so dumb, man. Why would he, like, however he made, like the software he's doing for Microsoft is so elementary. Like he just couldn't, like, he didn't see the business side of anything. My cousin Carl, he just loved computers, always had as a young person. But I knew that mentality. He also had a lot of contempt for regular folk and kind of believed so much in machines. And I think, I guess I sort of saw that as the thread, this idea that confusing people for machines and machines for people. And it kind of once that happened, all kind of made sense. And reading back in the early AI, artificial intelligence people, McCarthy was the guy who coined the term artificial intelligence. And his story was just so interesting because he started out as like a red diaper baby, as I said, like, had communist parents, and then kind of became more right wing, and went to Stanford from MIT. And just that the hopes they had for AI were just, you read them, they're just so bizarre, but they're like, you can be sympathetic to it. Like, he genuinely thought, like, why would you not want to build a machine smarter than a person? And then you can ask him, like, why are we here? Like, why, if Einstein could figure out how the universe worked to a degree, imagine a machine that's three times as smart as Einstein. Like, they had this sort of like vision. It was like warped, but it was kind of coherent, and it definitely wasn't about making money. It was not. And my cousin Carl, like I'm saying, I had a story maybe I'm not telling well. I was like, he couldn't even understand like what Bill Gates' decisions that were just about making money by being the main software for whatever, IBM, DOS or whatever that became Microsoft. Like, he just thought, like, why would you want to do it? It's so boring. So I just admired that part of it. And I sort of saw that vision, which had this problems about how they think of people in society, but at least it wasn't about like exploiting people and making money, and then saw that become doubly corrupted. So then it became kind of, it made sense to me, the story I was telling, that like, you have these sort of hackers or these computer scientists who don't treat people like, treat machines like people and people like machines. And then you have Stanford, like every moment kind of encouraging the worst instincts and to monetize what they've done. And then suddenly that's where we are now, where we have like people like Elon Musk who are filthy rich and also have contempt for democracy. And like, it all made sense. Now telling it, with biographies, I guess it probably is a trope, and maybe it's a little simplistic, because I guess I do like the whole corruption narrative. Like I love telling, like, there was a point where, the Google founders were idealistic and were saying you can't have ads with a search engine. Search engine is your guide through the internet. How could you have ads? It would be corrupting. And to see them slowly being encouraged by Stanford to get investments, and then lo and behold, they're ads and they're just fine and life goes on. And like, so there's sort of similar things like that. I don't know if Mark Zuckerberg quite had a corruption moment, but it's just interesting to see how, going from a young, more idealistic kid to becoming what he is now. And so I kind of just like those stories, and sort of seeing how it ends up being all men. It ends up being a very kind of, I guess, there are patterns that you can kind of see. So that's how I kind of organized it. But the two tracks of the history of computer science and the history of Stanford, and throw in the fact that Stanford had this kind of connection to eugenics, and the role of this guy Lewis Terman and Frederick Terman, Lewis Terman the father, Frederick the son, who became provost at Stanford. And they really have another kind of view of similar, where they devalue people who they don't think are worthy. And I don't know, it just all kind of came together to me. It made so much sense. So then, throw in the fact that I kind of see this Trump alliance in 2017, and like it's coming to fruition 2024. I'm like, wow, I just unlocked the code. So I'm like full of myself and think the book makes so much sense. And I'm excited to like get the message out, even if it is kind of a bleak message. If that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. There's a lot of things there, of course. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, one through line, I guess, that comes through, especially with the current founder biographies that you have in there, is, well, it feels to me just people who I guess you could say got lucky. Their skills in one way or another aligned with the needs of the world, society, and they just compounding success and wealth and power. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what the question is there.
You feel like there's luck? I mean, I feel like a lot of it is about pivoting, right? I mean, Zuckerberg, kind of constantly pivoting, and like if it were just Facebook today, I don't think it really would be a player, but getting Instagram and WhatsApp. So I do think there's this is the Peter Thiel which is why, again, he's not like a proverbial hacker like the others. You might argue, why is he even in there? But, he had this insight about the network effect, this idea that you need to just become monopoly to really make it all make sense. And, he's a key advisor, first investor to Zuckerberg, because, of course, Reid Hoffman would have been the first investor, but he felt like with LinkedIn, he shouldn't have, he had a competitor. So he kind of, pushed it to his friend, who were apparently they're ideologically opponents, but they're very good friends. And he told him to invest in Facebook. And he's been constant force for saying monopolies. I just think that ability to pivot doesn't, that's why I'm not quite with the whole luck thing. I don't know. I just feel like it's about exploiting the way digital effects and network effects work. And that's, again, something that it's almost the government has abdicated. So it's just kind of like this wild, wild west. And, yeah, I feel like it's more the ones who are more most sort of absolutely on target. It's easier to ask for forgiveness and ask for permission. Those kind of people are the ones who thrive. I guess I don't see it as like sort of luck or sort of being in the right place, right time. But that, I mean,
Okay, I see.
Yeah, I wonder.
Yeah, well, there's a sort of stereotype of hackers that comes out in some of the stories, or many of the stories, which, I mean, I can't really argue with it, as you know not socially maladjusted, bordering on maybe even misanthropic, just concerned with the machine and so forth. Um, do you do you think the issue is hackers, engineers, and so forth gaining political power per se, or is it a more specific subset of those hackers that are are the ones who have gravitated toward power that are the real
Yeah,
problem in your
that's an
view?
interesting question. I mean, I guess I would kind of like, to my mind, just to think of an example, would be like, let's say whoever the genius was who helped build the pyramids, you wouldn't necessarily want them in charge of the government of ancient Egypt. I don't want the pharaoh either, but I mean, like, I don't know how the two correlate. It's just weird to think that you would want, Mark Zuckerberg, for whatever his skills are, to then really be in charge of the public sphere, or what can be said there. It's just a strange, like, qualification. I guess I definitely, for all its flaws, and we're living through the flaws in America now, I mean, I do believe in democracy, and that's a better way to sort of align power and to make decisions, rather than leaving it in the hands of these people who are, yeah. And you could argue that, and that's I think a very constant debate, right? Like, people would criticize my book, I'm sure, by saying it's just capitalism. Why am I like making a big deal about like hackers and like some sort of specific, like you're saying a subset within hackers, but even like, why are hackers any different than, Henry Ford or fill in the blank, or the railroad barons? And I do think there is some sort of difference. I mean, like, reading a lot on it and really thinking about it, there is this like power, and I'm not a coder at all. I'm not technically savvy at all, which I think has helped me in some of my journalism. But I definitely remember like early in my career, I was like, I have people I would talk to, like, explain things to me. I once asked him like what an RSS feed was, and he was like, "I will tell you this, but do not ever admit that you've asked this before." And it's like, I mean, I'm cool with like not knowing this stuff at all. And I think looking at it from afar, it's just like there's an incredible power of having, they call it like a closed world. I think it was this really, profound critic of AI named Joseph Weizenbaum, who I read about in the book a lot, who sort of talked about like that power that, like, in the computer, you can make gravity go up instead of down. Like, that's like, you're creating a whole world. And it's like, that is a certain vision that I don't think a lot of people in other fields ever had. I mean, if you're a railroad baron and think the world is your, for you to play with, you can knock down trees and cities, whatever. It's not quite the same as thing you can like order, gravity to be upside down. I think it's something that's just sort of a closed world of that screen, of that box of a computer, that kind of feeds into delusions of being really the number one in charge. That's what the argument I'm making anyway. I love to hear discussions about it. I definitely understand the criticism. It just says it's just capitalism or hyper capitalism, and why am I like focusing on some subset about hackerdom or Stanford?
Yeah, I mean, a counter argument, as far as the political aspects of, hackers getting involved in politics, is uh, uh, there have been, well, you could call them real abuses of the political system by anti-tech people. Well, I'm curious what you think about it. But for example, the so-called war on cryptocurrency by the Biden administration. Most famously, this was pre-Biden, but most famously, Ross Ulbricht, the founder of oh man, I'm blanking on it
Silk
now.
Road. Silk Road.
Silk Road, yes, yeah, it was sentenced to a double life sentence for arguably things that don't deserve anything close to that. And then more generally, there are all these crypto related companies during the Biden administration that were so-called debanked. The government pressured banks to cancel their bank accounts and so forth. And tied in with that supposed pressure by various administrations on social networks to censor political statements, various political statements and views, most notably during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't know. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I hear you. I
potential
mean, these are
excesses.
like, I mean, I mean, crypto's its own. You have to like sort of separate these things out. I mean, I guess I've never really been a extreme like a libertarian or a free speech person. To me, it seems reasonable for a government to say during COVID you can't spread misinformation that's really dangerous. Certainly, we agree you can't spread misinformation about voting. And I think a lot of what I've kind of, when you think about the libertarian argument, I guess I don't even go so deep into it, because to me, the first thing is that I think libertarians would have to agree that you can't advocate having no rules when the system started out unfair. If we lived in a world where there wasn't systemic racism and sexism and whatever isms, there are other isms you add to that, and the wealth inequality, maybe you could say, I mean, I certainly get that preference. Like, leave me alone. I'm allowed to say what I want. If you're offended, tough luck. If I'm allowed to do what I want, I'm allowed to take what drugs I want. I'm allowed to do, as long as I'm not harming you. And like, I get that argument, but I think it was to me always really profound that John Perry Barlow, right, the guy who wrote the what it was called, like the Declaration of Independence for Cyberspace, I think it was called. He had this vision where, like, the internet's this other world. There's going to be no gender. There's no race on the internet. And you're like, well, I mean, what are you talking about? I mean, it's like, of course there's. I mean, how could you just like go like this and it disappears? I think a lot of what the libertarian argument is like premised on not caring about the reality we have now. So that's what long way of saying that, like, COVID is like, there are things that matter. Like, you can't. Our elections have a history of being unfair and having black people prevented from voting. So of course you're not going to take the freedom to lie to a certain community about when to vote is not like just my freedom. Or likewise, if COVID is like going to kill people, to just have the freedom to sort of lie about it, or to insist on doing stuff that's dangerous, I'm not going to go there. Now, of course, the flip side is that, like, you give government a lot of power that way, and then you have a bad government like Donald Trump, and what's good for the goose is good for the gander. I have to be, I guess, okay with them deciding that like you can be racist and be the government. And I mean, that is a problem. I guess having fair elections is important. Not having disinformation elections is important. But we are where we are. So what I'm saying is that, like, I understand why it's like scary to have rules and scary to say hate speech is bad. Like, who's going to say what's hate speech? But I'm going to like die on that hill, because I think there really are history that demands that we have those kind of rules. So I'm just not sympathetic to that. And then, then separating out crypto. I mean, again, maybe I'm coming on here very strong, and it's nice for you not to say that it's like not a polemic. I mean, one of the criticisms of the book, I mean, it got many nice reviews, and this Times review was pretty critical, and I like look back on it now because it was partly critical that I was too unfair to Peter Thiel, and I look at that line, I'm like, great, okay, I'll take that hit. I really wasn't unfair to Peter Thiel in retrospect. But I think he thought it was like kind of, arguing so strongly for these views. And like, so I will give you a view like that, which is like, crypto to me is like, by definition, not a thing. Like, I can't even take it seriously. And the idea that it's worth so much money is just so sad to me, because it is, in my mind, just a Ponzi scheme. Not that digital currencies aren't interesting. And look, and I'm, not to toot my own horn, but I wrote one of the first articles, go back and look at it, about Bitcoin when it was like $17. I mean, I love to tell people the story that, like, there was someone in the New York Times who was into crypto then, and he explained how it worked, because I definitely couldn't figure it out. And we set up a wallet, and he gave me a penny just to demonstrate, maybe it's called a Satoshi, I don't know, but 1/100th of a Bitcoin, and just to show how the transfer works, which then was later, worth, I don't know, like $500 or something. I mean, I gave it to some friend when it was worth 200. I remember that. So it was like he was doing literally just to show how it works. I definitely was fascinated by Bitcoin as a thought experiment and what it meant and all that. But the idea, I mean, I always thought, like, how could Bitcoin be a real thing if it meant that 1% of the economy is owned by the Wicklebosses? Like, that doesn't make any sense, because we're a society. We decide who gets things. We don't just like start Earth with like the Winklevosses have 1% of everything. It just, so I mean, to me, it just doesn't make any sense. So of course it should be regulated. Of course it should be done through the government. I don't see the virtue. I can't see how anyone, how you can have a currency that's worth a different amount every day, and it's like clearly speculation. So I mean, I just feel sad, because we are an economy now, a society where people are sports gambling and they're gambling with crypto, and it's like, it's just very unproductive. And I just feel like a lot of people get hurt. And I think this is something, I mean, I try to do in the book a little bit, but like, there is a real cost. Like, there is a cost of like Google being so dominant. Like, companies around the country are mailing them a check every month to be listed there. It's like there's a reason they make money. Like, it's not the reason why they're making tens of billions of dollars a year is because they are getting checks from businesses. They are, Amazon. I was really struck that Jeff Bezos, again, not a hacker, but very very mathematically minded, and worked with this very elite quant hedge fund. And he had this idea, like, imagine if you got a cut of every transaction on the internet. Like, that would be a great business. And that's like what he created. And you just want to go, like, why should one company have a cut on every, I mean, it just doesn't make any, again, assuming we're a society, not a bunch of random actors who are just in a war, a war to the, whoever can get what they want gets it, assuming we have like values. So that was that's my long way of answering the question about why we should be reining in tech, and why, I'm not like pining about the Silk Road guy. I mean, but in general, crypto needs to be highly regulated, because it doesn't really have a purpose. And it seems like its main purpose is to get rich by tricking people, grifting.
Well, okay, yeah, yeah.
It's a lot there too. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm sure there are many people who are at the same time completely dumbfounded by the success of Bitcoin, and also kicking themselves for not having bought and held on to it, 15 years ago, or whatever it was.
Yeah, it would have been about it was 2007 or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
2009 was that article. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. There. Well, so since you talk about it in the book too, in your new introduction, you say, it's time for the government to step in and I guess via taxation, potentially other regulations, curb the power of these tech companies. What specifically do you think the government should be doing?
Yeah, I mean, first off, taxation. I do think, like, what's going on in California, I think, is really important to like tax billionaires and kind of
wealth taxes.
Yeah, wealth tax. Yeah, and definitely get, we have to, like, I think it was Bill Clinton, that famous moderate Democrat, who said when you find yourself in a hole, the first thing you have to do is stop digging, and we just can't allow. And that's sort of part of the problem. That's what that table you mentioned in the book talks about. It's just the compounding effects, right? It's like, when they're that wealthy, they're going to get wealthier and wealthier and wealthier, and they have more and more political influence, which again makes them, wealthier. So it's a vicious cycle that you really have to undo. And I do just think in general, they have to be broken up as companies. The idea that the acquisition of Instagram, or that they can't have control across so many different platforms, and in general, that platforms can't be so big. And I don't know whether, I mean, again, I'm open to nationalizing them as well. Like, I just think that, like, the public square is something that should be public. I guess another epiphany, I think about, like, because in something I wrote, my daughter like pushed back when I said, like, they've also privatized libraries, and she was like asking what I meant by that, and I just mean that, like, Google, has now become the repository for digital books. And why was that? Like, to me, it was another real head scratcher, or epiphany moment when I read about the scanning of books. Again, I love, like, digital books. And the Internet Archive is an amazing tool to like find old books, and so searchable. It's like just an unbelievable thing. Again, it's a nonprofit, so that's nice to see. And then when I realized that Google had this plan to scan books, but that they weren't going to share that, it was like, like they're all about crawling the entire web and making that accessible, in essence, copying the entire web. And then, but when they did their own scanning, it's like, well, oh, can I go look at that? No, we have that. I mean, it's like, oh, okay, I guess they're not like, again, that's what's different than a library. Like the library's goal is to make all information available. Wikipedia's goal is, what you have to love about Wikipedia, you can't even believe it when you describe to people, is how transparent it is. I just like, and it was always, when I would write about Wikipedia, I mean, I wrote stories like I say, going back to 2006 when Wikimania was in Boston, that it's all there. It was like, granted, I would have friends that I knew in the community who could help me, guide me, because you realize that the whole history is there, every version of the article is there, everyone has edited, everything the editors have edited themselves. It's just all there. It's like how to find it, even all the discussions that are, and I know things that eventually get deleted if they're like inappropriate, but in general, this idea that it's so transparent, I just think it's like such an amazing thing. And like, that's what the world should be like, especially when it comes to information, but all these things that are public goods should be as transparent as possible. And that was sort of what I didn't see in Google. And that made me think like, wow, okay, the don't be evil thing. I mean, maybe it was always questionable whether that was ever their motto, but that's just not what you can expect a company to be like. It's naive to think that. I was naive to think that,
Yeah, well, clearly they were too, or apparently, potentially. One other interesting aspect of the book is how not dated it feels. I mean, it came out 10 years ago, but the list of players in Silicon Valley is more or less the same as it is now. With obviously the Elon Musk is a new. Somewhat of a new tech mogul, and Sam Altman and
Sam Altman, I would say, would be the one that I thought was like, and that's why I was also, again, if I'm patting myself on the back, I like look up the history, the background of Sam Altman, and it would have been he also was a hacker, and also was like, like a coder by nature, and also had the same kind of values and the same sort of twisty kind of thing, which you could, very Zuckerberg-like, I would say, where it's like, very idealistic, but also cutthroat. It's kind of like even this thing with, with the DOD that's been going on in America, it's like, oh, first he makes the deal and gets the, pushes out Anthropic. And then it's like, oh, I mean, looking back, I could have been more, it does look bad. I mean, like, it's like Zuckerberg to the T. Like Zuckerberg would do ruthless things, and he's sort of like, I'm really contemplating that again. I don't know that that's like, I mean, he just fit the book so well that like it's, again, and that's like, maybe too deterministic. It was almost like there was a prototype, and like in the lab, Sam Altman would just be, went to Stanford, dropped out of Stanford, coder, did startups, and ruthlessly found a niche. So I guess that is your point. Like, in that sense, it is that finding a niche and going right at it, in AI. And so yeah, so I do feel like he's not in the book, but in so many, and I mentioned obviously in the introduction, but he's so much like, he's a prototype, and he fits the theory. And I guess I'm really, trying to insist the theory is right, or give some insight. I just want to give insight to people about what is going on and why they should be suspicious, and why, it's natural to take people at their word, but in this case, you really shouldn't,
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting situation, especially because OpenAI is still maybe nominally a nonprofit.
Yeah, that was interesting. I used to be fascinated by Mozilla, similar thing, similar structure, and I was always like, I wrote about Mozilla and its relationship with Google. It just all seems like small peanuts now. That's kind of, as a journalist with Trump now, all these things you thought of as like big, not scandals, but big like ethical problems and questions, like Mozilla's connections to Google, is that right? And blah blah blah. And how does it affect the Firefox browser? And you look now. The rampant corruption, it's like, it's so quaint, the things I used to worry about. OpenAI being so the same issue, where Mozilla used to go through that, they were nominally a nonprofit with this very, very wealthy for-profit subsidiary, right from the money they got from Google. likewise, OpenAI's taken that to the nth degree. And OpenAI just blew it up and said, like, we're going to figure out a way to become a for-profit. And Mozilla never quite did that. So it's just funny. Things have gotten so, yeah, we've lost all kind of guardrails all over, I would say.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I guess part of it is scandals that aren't in the billions of dollars no longer really qualify as
right. That was only hundreds of millions.
Discussing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but well, it's interesting because in part because Silicon Valley, the tech sector, the whole concept is innovation and disruption and so forth, and yet somehow it's the same companies and same names, including Wikipedia, arguably, that have been around for 20 years or so. There's some people, I dare I say, Peter Thiel among them, have argued that there's been a slowdown in innovation. Or at the very least, there's been a slowdown in terms of the tech ecosystem, in terms of changes, new companies showing up, and so forth. Do you think that's true, or is it really just sort of the inexorable effect of the network effect that the large fish just keep getting larger?
Right. I think anything. I guess he would argue. I think, to be fair to him, that he would think that having large monopolies will allow for better research. I guess think back like the Bell Lab model, and I guess I just point to the lack of government investment in research was going to hold us back, right? And yeah, I know the disruption. I mean, I don't know what Peter Thiel is really looking for. He was like flying cars he talks about, and I guess there is a certain frustration that the last century went through such changes, and there might be just sort of these limits on how much progress can come from where we are. I mean, again, it's like when you read Musk, which I read a lot about. I actually had this, I had a year as like a fellow, an arts fellow, and I wrote this play about what I'd never done before. I was trying to expand about imagining the cage match between Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg as if it actually had happened, and what how it would have gone down. And I know I called the walrus because Musk had this theory he would win by falling on him like a walrus, whereas Zuckerberg clearly believed in training and stuff. But it led me to read a lot about Musk, and read a lot of his interviews, just what they say. And I mean, the role of Mars, it's like hard to know what to even make of it. Like, I see now he's retreating on that, but like, should it ever been taken seriously? I mean, like, what when you talk about like advancement, like, he's very frustrated clearly that this idea that we aren't advancing fast enough, but the idea that you're going to just will us to have, a civilization on Mars is so. Again, it's same kind. Really, it's similar like the crypto thing, where it's like these are delusions, and you don't really know what to sort of say about them. And like, to me, almost taking them seriously is to sort of devalue the conversation, because like it's just not possible that we're going to have like in the near future life on Mars. And so why am I saying that? I guess I'm saying about Musk, about technology, that I think that the hope to having such advancements is really unrealistic. It's unrealistic. It's like and I don't know why having like our planet survive isn't more of a priority. Like, I guess I just don't really, and that's a whole other thing of, again, in their own little boxes, these computers. And I do think the science fiction part of it is another thread. That could be a whole other episode. Maybe you've had one already. The whole role of science fiction and that fantasy, and like why flying cars mean a lot to Teal, but not harmony on Earth, or an Earth that's like resisting climate change. I don't know. I mean, like that's sort of part of being the hero of your narrative or something. And again, this is the things you have to. Why we don't want them in charge. You don't want people who sort of. It's funny, the thing about Trump. Another way that Trump and Silicon Valley were so aligned was his saying, yeah, only I can fix it. And to me, that seemed like such a founder myth idea. Like, and then, they couldn't be more different, right? One wears a T-shirt, one wears a long red tie, but it's like that same delusion that only I can fix it. That founder. To me, it showed another simpatico between them. I was like, and actually a piece I wrote was like sort of citing that exact sentence he said in 2016 or 2015 even, to show he's a real Silicon Valley guy in his own way, his own weird way.
Yeah. Yeah. Various things that, the science fiction thing is really interesting. There's, I was talking about it with someone, how how many names and concepts show from science fiction show up. There's two different AI companies named Grok, which is a more famous one and a less famous one, but that comes from Robert Heinlein book. Yeah,
I mean,
very
you throw
similar.
fantasy in there, and you got like, half the company. If you throw Lord of the Rings in,
Oh, right, right.
yeah. So I mean, I think sci-fi slash fantasy. Yeah, and yeah. Again, it's not my. I was once thinking of trying to write a book of this with a friend who's much more steeped in that world. And yeah, I mean, to realize that this book I didn't even know, Ender's Game, which Mark Zuckerberg really said was his favorite book. Later, kind of backtracked. There is something, yeah, in the Foundation trilogy. I guess I was more struck. I remember writing a piece a long time ago about Wikipedia, kind of bring it back about how it was so like Borges, and and how the concept. It is just like a mind blowing thing. Wikipedia. I mean, I think it was Yochai Benkler. I think he's been on your show who talked about. I remember talking to him about like how Wikipedia's great gift was it basically took the level of altruism that like almost equivalent to giving someone directions on a highway or on the street or something, and just taking so much of that and making this incredible product. It didn't require like huge sacrifices, but the totality of it is so unbelievable. And yeah, and Borges was like this visionary who could see could push the idea of knowledge and to this nth degree in a way that it's amazing he could think of it. And like Wikipedia really brings it true. The amount of just sort of the hyperlinks and just kind of the way you can just I don't know, just like there's so much there. It's kind of yeah, whatever, eighth wonder of the world, I would say.
Yeah. Borges is one of my favorite authors. Yochai Benkler has never been on this
Oh,
podcast,
okay.
although it would be great if he were.
Sure, yeah, he's a real thinker on this stuff.
Yeah, I saw him talking at some Wikimania. Maybe it was even that Boston one. I'm not sure.
You've been going since then?
Well, I used to go quite a bit. I've been to maybe 5 overall. It's been a while. I might go to the upcoming one this summer, but
I
anyway.
think it's isn't in Paris or somewhere.
Yeah,
Horrible.
sure.
Yes, yeah. No, but
Um,
I used to use it as a real way to see the world. Before I was married with a family, because you really would you would go around the world. And the ones I went to were Argentina, Taipei, Gdansk, and Alexandria. I mean, these are like such different cultures, and you go there. I guess I'm always a kind of person who doesn't want to go on like a official tour, and you would get into the world of and it wasn't even the tech world, because I remember in Egypt particularly, there wasn't like a tech economy. So most of them were doctors. Many of them were women. I was really struck at how in Egypt, like, a large percentage of the audience were women, but they all had other really important, other technical jobs. They were not computer scientists. And it was just like, imagine this ability to like suddenly meet these interesting people and not having to, it was just incredible. So, I mean, I haven't gone in a while, but I mean, like, they really are like another like gift to the world, the Wikimedia, and very typically Wikipedia like that. It's just very open, and opening a world that's like incredible. It's something that I could never do before. Maybe there's some other industries or something where you can have a similar world if you all like are mountain bike fans. You probably have conventions and sort of get that similar world. But it was just to see this. Yeah, it's really an amazing thing. It was. So I miss going to these Wikimanias. I will. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I guess we've been to at least 3 Wikimanias in common. I don't know if we've ever
You were at Taipei
saw
or
each other. No, Alexandria, Boston,
Buenos Aires?
and Buenos Aires.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's where Richard
But-
Stallman spoke. It was really interesting. He gave this talk that was about how, why am I here? Free software has got nothing in common with Wikipedia. I decide what's in GNU, and it's not a debate, and we don't have a discussion about it. And it was sort of like, he really exposed this idea that like obviously there's sort of these big overlap between free software and Wikipedia, but Wikipedia is freaking crazier. It is more anarchic, and I think that was always what I heard someone recently use that line about AI, that it's like it only works in in practice, not in theory. And it was like, that was to me that's like Wikipedia, and that was like the original kind of, again, head scratcher or epiphany about it, because it is so true. And there is something like to learn that like anarchy can lead to like this great stuff is just, it's a real gift. I mean, so yeah, I remember like being reminded of that because Richard Stallman made it clear he was not part of an anarchic project. Just like he also made clear, free, is not free in terms of money, free in terms of freedom. And like, he wouldn't play into all the sort of values I thought they would have. Like, but Wikipedia does have basically, yeah.
Yeah. That was a very memorable talk. I don't think I've heard a speaker yell at the audience before or
You were at
after.
that talk also.
Yes.
We're
Yeah.
talking about
Yeah.
something that was like 10, 12 years ago. It was still stuck
Okay.
in our
Yeah.
mind.
No, it was
Yeah.
extremely memorable. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's so
Well, yeah.
funny.
His big desire was that people stop referring to it as Linux, and that it should be GNU/Linux.
Well, that I used to interview him, and like if you, not only did he want you to say that, if you didn't agree to say that, he would not talk to you. That was a condition. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, he's a very controlling person, and he's later had these issues come up. But yeah, he was. Yeah. Again, it's this sort of anarchy of Wikipedia that is just really exceptional. And then it's so usable. It's amazing. Yeah.
Well, yeah, well, just briefly, you brought up so many interesting things. I want to say, yeah, one really interesting thing about Wikimania, which ties into what you're talking about, is you can really see the distinction between the techies and the so-called normies. Even there in Adianis, which roughly correlates to the people who came in from outside the country and the people who are local, because they tend to better represent, the average
Right.
mentality and technological interest.
You felt like the people who came from far away were more likely to be techies.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
People like people in town would kind of show up. It's true. Yeah. Okay. It's true. Yeah. But I guess I was just struck that like Egypt almost didn't have like a techie. You were like a side techie. It was a hobby.
Right.
Techie. It wasn't yet a career there. And Argentina, I was struck at how aligned it was with the left, and it was really inspiring. They really saw, Wikipedia as a way of democratizing information, a way of fighting corporations, central control. And it was really, that all made sense to me. It was like, I was there and like, wow, they really get it. In a way that other places don't see it as political at all. Again, that's maybe what Latin America can contribute to the movement. So I was really struck at that. Taipei, I just remember being so hot that I would like walk out and my glasses would literally just like in my left. Yeah.
Speaking of Wikipedia and speaking of Elon Musk, since he has a tendency to show up in every conversation about everything.
Like
Wikipedia,
Trump.
Well, like Trump, sure. Wikipedia is of course under threat right now from various sources. I guess some people would say there's political threat to it from governments. There's also just competitors. Grokkipedia, obviously, that's Elon Musk's AI alternative, which actually uses quite a bit of content, mostly content from Wikipedia. But there's Russian and Chinese alternatives, state sponsored, and then there's always been competitors, but especially I guess the AI offers the possibility for anyone to create their own Wikipedia alternative fairly easily, relatively speaking. I guess that's a broad question. What do you think about the future of Wikipedia? But what do you think about Wikipedia in this current landscape?
Yeah, I tend not to be. I mean, I do think like the Elon part you're starting with. I do think that Wikipedia, as I sort of said maybe at the beginning, is this huge target. It is a huge like mole to be whacked, like an affront to sort of autocratic control of information. So it's just kind of an incredible. I think its very existence every day is just so annoying to people who are used to controlling information. I've never been able to sort of like write this story out, but I've taken, and again, part of the transparency of Wikipedia, I love that there's this list of conflict of interest edits, which you can look at every day, which are people who go through the proper way of registering. Like, I have a conflict of interest. I'm hired by Bill Ackman, the billionaire, to look at his article, and I would like to make these fixes. And it's just amazing to sort of see the list, often very powerful people who are, really not happy with how they're portrayed. And, I remember this James Brooks, the director, didn't like the way someone was described about his movie. It's just the notion that there is this site that is, not perfect by any means, that is independent and can kind of give a picture of a person, a powerful person, is really, amazing that it exists. So that is something I like look at all the time and think about and written about, how Russia's, tried to have a rival and really persecuted the Russian Wikipedians, and China already did that, and then by getting rid of Wikipedia entirely. So there's that one thread of like the Elon Musk part. The AI part, I guess I'm always been, I don't know, and maybe it's because of the book too, where I kind of was reading about the more old-fashioned AI researchers. I was working and writing about the role of Wikidata with AI or with large language models, or because to me, Wikidata, which I couldn't believe this thing exists, right? Maybe your audience will know, but this thing, this site that basically people only add facts, they don't even add prose or language. And the idea that people would sit and do basically data entry was like mind-boggling to me. But it exists, and to me, it was like, what a tool this is, because basically for a machine, it's like a human being going, yeah, Noam is this guy. He's an author. He lives in Brooklyn. He went to this school. Or I mean, it's like they're giving you a bunch of like, you may not be used to what humans are like, but here's what humans are like. Here's where they tend to live somewhere, and they tend to do this. And and it was like, I thought that would be sort of the better tool. But now we have this large language model method of taking so much data. So I do think that the thing that Wikipedia will always be needed is obviously the update, right? That's the thing that the AI companies are always worried about, like, how do you stay current? And Wikipedia is always being edited. I guess I don't buy the whole fear that there won't be new editors because it won't be seen as much, because so much was being incorporated into answers instead of being linked to Wikipedia articles. I just think that people who, I think enough people know about Wikipedia, and I think it's got to be a thrill to know that you are sort of creating articles that are become the basis for all this knowledge in the world online. I know for me, people can go look. I'm Chomsky 1, and I was actually told I had to make clear that I'm not Noam Chomsky, which I'm not, but it's like one of my nicknames. So I had like a little note there saying this is Noam Cohen, and I tend to like do articles of things that are very obscure, and I'm like, wow, I could, why is there no article about this? And I will create a short one, and I really count on just creating a little stub and having the ball be rolled. I've really probably never created one like you sometimes see students who create incredible, whole takes that are beautiful articles. I usually create enough of a stub and figure something will be interesting. And like some of them have become, I'm always like checking which one has become like the biggest one of the one I've sort of started. I did one like in a mosque. That was Malcolm X's mosque in Harlem, and that one became bigger, and it was an article before that. There are a couple others. So I just think that always will be an interest in doing that. And I guess I'm very optimistic about Wikipedia as a model, assuming that the autocrats don't get it. I just think it's I guess I don't worry as much about that. I think there's like kind of someone's playing into the AI fad or mania to sort of fear that it could overtake Wikipedia. That's what do you think? I mean, is that naive?
I don't know. It's hard to say what the growth of AI specifically is going to be like. I mean, maybe we're hitting a plateau now in terms of AI's capabilities. Maybe not. At the moment, you can tell when text has been AI generated, and it just doesn't. Something about it just doesn't feel right.
Are you worried that AI stuff will get on Wikipedia? I mean.
Oh no, I'm not that. No, I'm talking about. Well, it's all sort of tied in. AI alternatives and AI text on Wikipedia. Although obviously only one of them really would impact the popularity, the usage of Wikipedia. Having complete alternatives. I don't know.
But always the new stuff. I feel like the need for new stuff, and like that's something people can only do, right? I mean, I can't imagine, to see what's important, to synthesize new articles. I don't know. I mean, I think it's interesting. I mean, I'm definitely always bullish on Wikipedia. I know that it's like maybe not going to go through a growth spurt again, and but I do think other cultures. I guess I just think it's a really great model. I don't know why, if it were to wither, that would really be a sad comment more about people than about AI, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, there's an interesting critique of right-wing critique of Wikipedia, especially of the English language Wikipedia, which is um, for all the articles that are political in nature, that touch on politics in some way, which might be only 1% of all articles or whatever it is. There's been this, I guess, for lack of a better word, cabal of editors who have taken over. Some one critic has referred to it as a gang of 40, basically 40 editors who are just on the site all the time, preventing changes to what they've created, and getting users who disagree with them banned and so forth. And so the experience of being an editor editing political articles on Wikipedia has changed since whatever it is 10 years ago. Are you aware of that critique? Do
Oh,
you
I'm sure
buy
I'm
into
aware of
it?
that critique. I mean, Larry Sanger being, this co-founder, being a real, critic, and appearing on Fox News and making this argument. I mean, and maybe again, this is like I would identify as being on the left, so maybe that makes me hard to see this. I mean, Jimmy Wales has gotten involved by sort of arguing a certain. I mean, case in point, there was an article called MAGA Face, right, for women who kind of make their faces look like what is kind of considered the MAGA ideal woman. And he
Oh, with
argued
the
that was
plastic
inherent,
surgery or something?
yeah, plastic surgery, like kind of bigger lips, and and the way the makeup's applied. And Jimmy argued that was like inherently biased. It was a biased article. And I think eventually, usually he doesn't win these things. Usually, I do love the fact that usually when Jimmy gets involved, it goes the other way. He usually is, a force of, he doesn't usually get what he wants, let's say that. But in this case, it did get, kind of incorporated another article. And I guess I'm just thinking, like that, to me, that didn't seem wrong. Like the article seemed fine. It was sourced really well. And I mean, here's like what I basically think. And, I mean, maybe this is like sort of me showing my bias or something, but, certainly we're talking about like the MAGA supporter. It is a basic denial of truth, of like it's not an even split between right now in America between like Republicans, Democrats about what, or right and left about what is true. It is one side kind of denying truth. I was thinking about this in the context of CBS, like where CBS being acquired by this the son of this Trump supporter, and Barry Weiss being put in to run it, and it's like you don't even have to have like fawning coverage, or they do that a bunch too. The war is great, whatever. You also just have to like not do critical coverage, like to just sort of dumb everything down. Like saying partly what she wants to do is like have lots of interviews, like instead of informed interviews like this one, have sort of mindless sort of opinion bloviators, and not have actual reporting, because like that's sort of aggressive by nature. So I think that what we're really talking about is like, they would like to sort of see things like, why do we have so much stuff that's critical? Like why, let's just have like everything be two sides. And I really admire that like Wikipedia will not simply just say there are, opinions vary on blah, blah, blah. I remember not in the context of politics. I remember in the context of like homeopathy. Like I had a therapist who mentioned homeopathy. I generally didn't know a lot about it. And I looked it up, and it's just seeing Wikipedia's, inevitable prose to sort of just say, it clearly can't work scientifically because the amounts in use are below what their blood can register. Like it wasn't like some people believe homeopathy is the greatest thing in the world. Other people say it's scientifically dubious. It was like it can't work according to scientists. I was like, that was a lot clearer message to me than sort of the two sides. So I feel like they are willing to sort of have a debate, make a judgment, and sort of say it. And that can be provocative. I think maybe one side is used to sort of like, whoa, what about my, again, this whole thing about my feelings, like, what about my thought? I think it's like, I think giving food to poor people makes them actually hungrier. I mean, like, no, it's like we're going to have a conversation, like a discussion, and figure out what we're going to actually say. And like, we're going to say that homeopathy is not really scientifically valid, and we're just going to say that. That's what the facts show. So I think there's a lot of that going on. Like, it may be uncomfortable to say that women are encouraged in the orbit of Mar-a-Lago to sort of have this sort of distinctive look, and it's like a requirement, and that might be like, whoa, why are you like making commentary about you do about Democratic supporters? Like, I don't know, this is like something's happening, citations for it. What's wrong with that? So I just don't really buy the argument. I do know what you're saying about clicks, and I'm not going to have this fantasy that it's a very open world there. And I know that, I mean, I definitely delved deep into the Israel Palestinian conflict and how that is just so hard to manage, and it led to such really tough feelings. And like there's certain that hard subjects make hard rules and stuff. But I do think that, like, in general, I don't think there's a bias. I think there's a welcome kind of favoring having more information and more provocative stuff. I mean, the last thing I'll say, I mean, I wrote a piece about when Fox was sort of, I forgot what the word is for when they kind of, you're not allowed to use it for certain citations, particularly in politics.
Oh yeah, blacklisted.
Yeah, it's not quite blacklisted. Something that's like derogated or something.
Oh, okay.
And what I loved about it, there was a debate about it, and like I interviewed the guy who he wasn't like he didn't decide. He like led the discussion. I think it was kind of the official summarizer. Is Fox News a reliable source writing about politics? And he was like some guy from England who was into snooker, and and like he just was looking at it like, oh, yeah, it looks like Fox News isn't reliable. They make up a bunch of stuff. Yeah, he shouldn't. I mean, like he wasn't invested in it. He didn't care about politics. Wasn't American. I think that's an advantage of Wikipedia. And similar with the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, you can just sort of like say you're too close to it, and that's bad in some ways. That like you want people who are closer because they really follow it and know all the sources. But in some ways, you want like people who just aren't as emotionally tied to it. So I think in general, like that's kind of where they're at. And it's like it might seem that it's biased, but I think that wasn't a Democratic conspiracy to make Fox News be described as unreliable about politics. That was a dude from England just looking at the basic facts, and it's like it's not that complicated. And it's almost like to be forced the way like maybe the New York Times says to pretend that Fox is an actual normal outlet. That's the lie. And so like that's the right-wing conspiracy going on around the world where we can't just say that what's black is black, what's white is white. So I mean, but that's me. Maybe that's my own bias. I don't know.
Yeah. That's very interesting. Moving on, I guess, to, well, I don't know if this is less provocative subject, but another context that all this takes place in, and I guess it ties into Wikipedia also, is China, the rise of China as a tech power, and of course they've had their own Wikipedia like site for a long time now because Wikipedia is banned there, I believe, and it's now available in English and some other languages. Yeah, I mean, one potential danger that people have pointed to in any kind of regulation, whether it's of AI or crypto or just the tech world in general in the U.S., is China will win on whatever industry it is. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Independent, because let's think about with the Wikipedia sort of their version of it, which they then have, I guess, because of like large language models, it's so much easier to translate. I think that is an amazing, development, which I never would have anticipated. I used to be fascinated by the question of translation, and to see how it's kind of just, become like more or less a trivial problem, right? Wouldn't you say? So the idea that what's sort of notable about China translating their sort of official, not truly a wiki, but like massive digital encyclopedia to English is that like, yeah, suddenly that's the same amount of words as, Wikipedia or whatever, or nearly as many. So suddenly you have all these sort of China authorized words that are in the big pot that are being used by AI. And so like, that's troubling. So I never thought of that, like, and that's kind of the information wars we're talking about where like, now, countries can use social media to really influence opinions. That part's very scary. When it comes to sort of, I guess I just can't. I remember Zuckerberg being really early in arguing, hey, we may be doing terrible things, but if we don't do it, then China will do it. I just don't like that argument. I mean, I guess and I don't. I guess maybe I'm not thinking in 3D chess the way he is, but I do think you need to have basic rules. And like, I look at, again, maybe naive, I look at what America made America great, truly, and is its openness to new ideas, new people, immigrants, innovation. I mean, those are all things, but also with a American, like under the American regulatory system, and that's also part of what makes America great. And I guess the idea of just giving, I'm just never going to sign up for giving authority to these know-it-alls, to go back to the book, who claim that they know what's best for us. I will never sort of sign up for that. It's like, we are a society, we are going to make these decisions as a society, and we're definitely not going to let China make this, drive us to do things that we shouldn't do. I mean, to me, that's sort of ludicrous. And so, it could be that, like, we'll look back, I guess, and like the people who warned us about falling behind China were right, and we sort of stepped from being a vicious, technological power. But I don't think so. And I think our values are what like got us this far. And that's how I sort of answer those questions. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, great. I mean, it's interesting it's really interesting to talk about all these hot button topics and controversies and so forth. I do think it's your book is really interesting. People should read it, should check it out, because as I said, it doubles as sort of a really interesting series of snapshots on the lives, the careers of the people who have shaped the tech world, starting I guess in the 1950s, maybe even before, until now.
Yeah, it's nice to say. I think that it is notable, like you said, that they really are still characters with a couple of additions. But like, I guess I'm really committed. We are in such an instantaneous time, but I am really committed, like trying to understand the context and know who these people are, who want to, have these, huge roles in our society. So I do feel like that's a gift I can give, or something I'm trying to impart. So I appreciate that you focused on that, because it is kind of notable that they're still the same people.
Yeah. All right. Well, great. The book is The Know-It-Alls: The Rise of Silicon Valley as a Political Powerhouse and Social Wrecking Ball, and it's out again now in paperback.
And it has a cover that my wife sort of helped design, which has that famous photo of the inauguration with all the many of the characters in the book at Donald Trump's inauguration. It really kind of brought to life the themes of the book. It was kind of incredible. So hopefully it's distinctive that way. I'm a big fan of how it looks. So hopefully people can see it in the bookstores like that.
Yeah. That was a real snapshot in time. That was sort of a photo for the ages.
Yes.
The glitterati are
for many years to come. Well, great talking with you.
Yeah, it's great talking to you. Yeah, I was going to say the book is out via New Press, available in bookstores and
even Amazon
and Amazon. Yeah, it's yes, and more local online sellers presumably as well.
Absolutely, and through the publisher themselves too. Great.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, Noam, for coming on the program. It was great talking to you.
Thank you for making time. Thanks, man.